forest does not breathe as other places do. Its air is not merely heavy with the damp of spring or the musk of pine. It is a presence, a weight that presses against your ribs, muffling sound, clouding thought, as if the trees themselves conspire to keep their secrets. Portland's Forest Park, a sprawling 5,200-acre tapestry of Douglas firs, fern-choked ravines, and winding trails, welcomes thousands each year, hikers, birdwatchers, wanderers seeking solace in its green embrace. Yet, hidden within its depths, where the trails fade and the light grows strange, lies a secret that resists discovery. A church, gray-stoned and ivy-wrapped, that does not want to be found. My name is Thomas Patterson, and for 5 years, I've prowled the skeletons of abandoned places. Factories where rusted machinery looms like forgotten idols, hospitals with patient charts curling in dust, ships where the sea gnaws at human ambition. Each place yielded its story, its scars, its silence. But nothing, not the darkest mine nor the deepest sewer, prepared me for St. Bartholomew's Church of the Eternal Covenant, a place that broke every rule of reality I thought I understood. It began, as so many obsessions do, with a fleeting glimpse in a digital corner of the world. UrbanX Treasures, an online forum for urban explorers, was my nightly haunt, a place where thrill-seekers traded tales of crumbling asylums, sunken quarries, and forgotten tunnels. Amid threads about radioactive silos and haunted orphanages, one post caught my eye. The Church That Doesn't Want to Be Found, Portland Forest. The title reeked of melodrama, the kind of hyperbole that usually cloaks a mundane hike to a dilapidated barn. But the comments were different. They weren't boastful or exaggerated. They were bewildered, urgent, threaded with a quiet fear. Trail Ghost 87 wrote, "Hiked 6 hours following exact coordinates. GPS said I was there, nothing but trees. Paths kept shifting." Compass Crusader added, "Third attempt yesterday. Ended up at my car twice. Like the forest was spitting me out. It doesn't want you there." Another user, Deepwood Seeker, described a compass needle dancing like it was drunk, and a sensation of eyes watching from the canopy. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of my laptop casting shadows across my cluttered Portland apartment. Forests don't want anything, I told myself. They're just dirt, wood, and wildlife indifferent to human quests. But the pattern was undeniable. Mismatched coordinates, malfunctioning equipment, trails that looped impossibly, and that persistent sense of being watched. Some posts mentioned magnetic anomalies, others whispered of voices, soft, unintelligible, carried on the wind. 4 days later, I stood at the Wildwood Trail parking lot, the morning air cool against my face, my backpack heavy with gear. A GPS unit, a compass, a detailed topographical map, a camera with spare batteries, water bottles, energy bars, a first aid kit, a flashlight, and a whistle. Basic safety for a day hike, honed by years of crawling through unstable ruins. I'd averaged coordinates from the forum's 3 most credible accounts, calculating a location 4 miles northeast, likely in an unmapped pocket between 2 hiking paths. The forest greeted me with spring's vibrancy. Bright green leaves shimmered in the canopy. Birds called in sharp, looping patterns, and small creatures rustled through the underbrush. I walked steadily, checking my GPS every 30 minutes, marking my path on the paper map with a pencil. The trail was familiar at first, a well-trodden artery of packed earth, but as I veered off path, the forest grew denser, the light dimmer, filtered through layers of needles and moss. 2 hours in, the first anomaly struck. My GPS showed me veering southwest, back toward my car, despite walking straight northeast along a ridge. I tapped the screen, expecting a glitch, but the readings held. I pulled out my compass, and my stomach tightened. The needle spun lazily, pausing briefly in one direction before resuming its aimless dance. I tapped it against my palm. Nothing. "What the hell?" I muttered, scanning the surroundings. Tall Douglas firs loomed, their trunks cloaked in moss. Ferns swayed in a breeze I couldn't feel. A small clearing lay ahead, dappled with sunlight. Nothing was wrong, yet everything was. I used the sun's position to correct my course, estimating northeast by its arc. My map showed no streams or landmarks nearby, but I marked my position, a cluster of gnarled oaks, and pressed on. By noon, I should have reached the church. Instead, I found a stream, its water clear and cold, uncharted on any map. Nearby, a rock formation crouched like a beast, its shape unsettlingly deliberate, as if carved to watch passers-by. My GPS now claimed I was walking in perfect circles, despite an hour of straight hiking. Frustration clawed at me. I'm no novice. I've navigated pitch-black mines, crawled through city drainage systems, hiked remote cliffs without a trail. Yet here, in a forest trodden by weekenders, I couldn't hold a straight line. I stopped, ate an energy bar, and studied my map. The forest was silent, too silent. No birds, no rustling. The air felt thick, my breath shallow, as if I were underwater. By 3 p.m., with daylight waning and my tools useless, I admitted defeat. Continuing was reckless. I traced my route back on the map, using landmarks, a split boulder, a lightning-scarred pine. The return was unervingly easy. My compass steadied, pointing south. My GPS snapped to clarity, guiding me to the trailhead as if nothing had happened. It was as if the forest relented, releasing me once I abandoned my quest. Back at my car, I sat behind the wheel, engine off, staring at the dashboard. Both devices failing simultaneously, statistically improbable. A magnetic anomaly, perhaps, but that didn't explain the ease of my retreat, as if the forest had allowed me to leave. Curiosity, not failure, took root. That night, my apartment became a war room. Maps sprawled across my desk, pinned with notes. My laptop glowed with geological surveys, historical records, and forum threads. A 1978 study noted magnetic anomalies in the forest's northeast quadrant, attributing them to unidentified mineral deposits. A 1912 local history book mentioned a late 1800s church built by an unorthodox religious sect, its location lost after a fire. The sect, vaguely described as devotees of esoteric rites, vanished from records by 1900. The more I read, the more I believed the church was real, and something about it was alive, resisting discovery with a will of its own. A week later, I returned, my obsession sharpened by sleepless nights. I'd upgraded my gear. A satellite phone for emergencies, a specialized compass designed for magnetic interference, a topographical map detailing elevation changes, creek beds, and rock formations. Sleep was a distant memory, my mind consumed by routes, coordinates, and the church's enigma. I chose an unmarked trail past Newton Creek, less traveled, closer to the 1978 anomaly zone. The morning was colder here, the air sharp with pine and earth, bird calls sparse and distant. I navigated by landmarks, a twisted cedar, a moss-covered boulder, avoiding my compass and GPS, which I suspected would betray me again. For 2 hours, I marked my progress on the map, the forest floor a soft carpet of pine needles and fallen leaves. The trees grew older, their trunks thicker, bark etched with time's patient grooves. The underbrush thinned, leaving an oddly clear path, as if the forest had been sculpted. Then, the air changed. My footsteps grew muffled, each crunch absorbed by an unseen force. Birdsong faded, replaced by a silence so profound it felt like a presence. The sound of my water bottle sloshing was dull, my own breathing soft, as if I stood in a soundproof chamber. Acoustic dampening, I thought, grasping for a term, but it felt inadequate, a human label for something inhuman. My satellite phone's signal weakened, flickering between 1 bar and none. My GPS cursor jumped erratically, placing me in a lake 5 miles away. I stopped, heart pounding, and scanned the forest. The trees were the same, tall, moss-draped, but the light was wrong, dimmer, as if filtered through an unseen veil. Ahead, a clearing emerged, dominated by a massive fallen log, its surface slick with lichen. On the log sat an old man, his presence so abrupt I froze. He hadn't been there moments ago, yet there he was, as if the forest had conjured him. His white beard was wild, cascading over a faded red and black wool shirt. His canvas pants were worn thin at the knees, his leather boots studded with hobnails, relics of a bygone era. A canteen hung from a strap across his chest, its metal dented but polished. His blue eyes, bright and unyielding, fixed on me. "You're looking for the church," he said. Not a question but a statement. His voice low, gravelly, carrying the weight of certainty. My skin prickled, a chill unrelated to the morning air. "How did you know?" I asked, stepping closer, cautious. He shifted, making room on the log. "Only reason anyone comes to this part of the forest. Name's Harold Jenkins." I sat, keeping a respectful distance, my backpack heavy against my spine. "Thomas Patterson," I said, eyeing his archaic gear. He noticed my satellite phone, its screen dark. "That won't help you," he said, pointing. "Nothing works right near that place." Harold was a former park ranger, 43 years in these woods, his knowledge etched into the lines of his weathered face. He spoke of the church as a living entity, a place that appeared and vanished, taking people with it. "They don't come back," he said, his eyes distant. "Or they come back wrong, like something else is wearing their skin." I pulled out my notebook, pulse quickening. "Mind if I take notes?" He glanced at the pages with pity. "Write what you want. Won't change anything." Harold recounted a 1968 incident. A hiker found the church, returned with a local news crew, and found nothing but trees. The cameraman vanished 2 weeks later, his car abandoned at the trailhead. Over decades, others stumbled across it. Hikers, hunters, loners, emerging with haunted eyes, their stories fragmented. "It shows up when the moon is new," he said, "to those looking for something else. Answers, purpose, something to fill the hole in their lives." His gaze bored into me, sharp as a blade. "What are you looking for, Thomas Patterson?" I shifted uncomfortably, the question cutting deeper than I expected. "I solve puzzles," I said. "Find lost things, places others give up on." He shook his head, a slow, deliberate motion. "Some things want to stay lost. Some doors aren't meant to be opened." A gust rustled the canopy above, needles falling like soft rain, but no breeze touched us. Harold's head snapped up, eyes wide with fear. "Time to go," he said, grabbing a small pack I hadn't noticed. "What is it?" I asked, scanning the trees. "Stay on the marked trails, Mr. Patterson. Whatever you think you're looking for, it's not worth what you'll lose." He backed away, moving with startling speed for his age, and vanished into the forest. I called after him, but my voice fell flat, swallowed by the thick air. Within seconds, he was gone, the clearing empty save for the log and the weight of his words. I checked my watch, just past noon. Daylight remained, and Harold's warnings, far from deterring me, fueled my resolve. If the church was real enough for a ranger to document over decades, it was real enough to find. I hiked in expanding spirals, marking landmarks. A forked pine, a cluster of smooth stones on my map. The forest grew darker, the air heavier, as if resisting my progress. Twice, I looped back to familiar spots, despite walking straight, the forest bending my path like a maze. The sense of being watched intensified, a prickling at the base of my skull. I spun, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever stalked me, but saw only trees, their branches swaying in a wind I couldn't feel. At dusk, I stumbled upon 5 stone pillars, each 7 feet tall, arranged in a rough circle 20 feet across. Covered in moss and lichen, they were clearly man-made, their surfaces etched with worn symbols. Not letters, but pictographs, spirals and jagged lines that seemed to pulse under my flashlight. The stones were cold, unnaturally so, and the moss was dry, a stark anomaly in the damp Pacific Northwest. I touched one, its surface smooth beneath the growth, and felt a faint vibration, like a distant heartbeat. I photographed each pillar, sketched their layout, and measured their spacing. They weren't the church, but they were connected, perhaps relics of the unorthodox sect from the 1800s, a marker of their forgotten faith. Darkness closed in, forcing me to retreat. As I packed my camera, My flashlight caught a narrow path leading from the circle into the forest's depths. Temptation tugged, a siren's call to follow, but hiking at night in a place that warped reality was suicide. I vowed to return with camping gear, to trace that path to its end. For 2 weeks, my apartment transformed into a shrine to the church. Maps covered the walls, pinned with red threads connecting coordinates, elevations, and lunar cycles. Printouts of geological surveys and historical records littered the floor, interspersed with sticky notes scrawled with theories. Sleep was a ghost, my nights consumed by the church's mystery, its patterns swimming behind my eyelids. My friend Andy Wilson, a geologist working on a thesis about magnetic anomalies, visited, his eyes widening at the chaos. "You look like a conspiracy theorist," he said, half laughing. I told him everything. Failed hikes, herald's warnings, the stone circle, the muffled air. Andy, skeptical but intrigued by the magnetic anomalies, agreed to join me, borrowing magnetometers and electromagnetic field detectors from his university. We planned a May expedition, timing it for a waning moon, close to Harold's new moon condition, hoping to catch the church when it was most likely to appear. We drove to Forest Park before dawn, the sky a bruise of purple and indigo. Andy, in cargo pants stuffed with gadgets and a university polo, looked more scientist than explorer, his hiking boots barely broken in. Our route followed a ridge to bypass the navigation issues I'd faced before, a path carved by elevation lines on my new map. The air was cold, sharp with pine and loamy earth, the forest waking slowly under a veil of mist. We talked, college memories, Andy's research, my past expeditions, easing the miles. 4 hours in, we reached a stream, its water crystalline but icy, 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Far too cold for a spring-fed creek in May. Andy dipped a thermometer, frowning. "This is spring water temperature, like it's coming straight from deep underground." We crossed on smooth stones, the water's splash unnaturally muted, and the air chilled abruptly, as if we'd stepped into a refrigerated vault. "You feel that?" I asked, my breath visible. Andy nodded, pulling out a device resembling a handheld console with an antenna. It beeped softly, then faster, as he swept it around us. "Electromagnetic field variations," he said, his voice shifting to a clinical tone. "Strong ones. We're at the edge of something." The forest thickened, trees older, their trunks massive, bark darker. European black pines, Andy identified, not native to Oregon. Someone had planted them decades or centuries ago, far from any trail or road. The underbrush thinned, leaving a clear forest floor, unnatural in its tidiness, as if swept clean. The sense of being watched returned, stronger, a weight on my shoulders, a whisper at the edge of hearing. Andy's instruments beeped incessantly, mapping waves of distortion. "These patterns are incredible," he said, pausing to scribble in his field journal. "Like walking through a sea of electromagnetic interference." At noon, we stopped to eat energy bars, the trees' patterns shifting subtly, their bark etched with grooves unlike the surrounding firs. The terrain sloped upward, leading to a plateau my map suggested might hold answers. Andy's device screamed, readings spiking to levels he warned could affect health, pacemakers, neural signals. "We should be careful," he said, switching instruments. Then, the trees parted, and we stepped into a clearing we hadn't seen until we were within it, as if the forest had unveiled it at the last moment. There stood St. Bartholomew's Church, smaller than I'd imagined, yet impossibly real. Its gray stone walls rose 20 feet to a peaked roof, slate tiles missing in patches, exposing weathered beams. A square bell tower, its upper stones crumbled, jutted from the left side, ivy strangling its base. Arched windows held shattered stained glass, their colors glinting in the filtered light. A rusted iron fence encircled the church and a small graveyard, tombstones tilted or fallen in tall, unkempt grass. "I told you it was real," I whispered, my camera shaking as I snapped photos. A complex emotion surged, validation for my obsession, excitement at the discovery, and a creeping dread I couldn't name. Andy's GPS flashed, location undefined. Mine echoed the error. "This shouldn't be here," he said, his voice hushed. No structure this size could go undocumented. He noted the stone's foreign origin, unlike any local quarry, and the Gothic Revival architecture, suggesting the late 1800s. Yet the building's isolation defied logic. We approached the iron gate, its cross-shaped design rusted but intact. The hinges, surprisingly smooth, creaked open, the sound stretching unnaturally, echoing through the trees like a warning. The graveyard held 30 tombstones, most dated to the 1870s. Their inscriptions eroded beyond legibility, as if centuries, not decades, had scoured them. Andy crouched by one, a limestone slab tilted at a 45-degree angle. "This wear is impossible," he said, tracing the pitted surface. "Limestone erodes, but not like this. Not in a protected forest with minimal acid rain." A family plot, fenced in matching iron, held 5 graves, the central stone topped by an angel, its face worn to a blank mask. At its base, carved symbols, pictographs not English, stood out, preserved where names had faded. "These were deliberate," Andy said, sketching them. "They've survived better than the inscriptions." I photographed each angle, their meaning elusive but heavy with intent, perhaps tied to the sect's esoteric rites. The church's oak doors, one ajar, beckoned like a half-open eye. I pushed it wider, the wood moving silently, unervingly smooth for its age. Inside, a single room stretched under a high, vaulted ceiling, dust motes dancing in colored light from broken stained glass. The air was thick, smelling of old wood, damp stone, and a faint metallic tang, like blood without its warmth, a scent that clung to the back of my throat. Wooden pews, their surfaces dull and partly rotted, stood in neat rows, facing a stone altar at the far end. A simple pulpit rested to its right, a narrow doorway behind it leading to darkness. Scattered on the floor were hymnals, their leather covers cracked, pages brittle. I opened one, finding text in Latin and English, printed in 1891 for St. Bartholomew's Church of the Eternal Covenant. The name sent a shiver through me, a confirmation, a tether to the records I'd found. In a small office off the altar, a parish record lay on a dusty table, its pages filled with neat handwriting. Baptisms, marriages, deaths, beginning in 1872. The final entry, dated October 15, 1923, read, "Final service before closure. The congregation has dwindled to 7 faithful. We depart with heavy hearts, knowing what must be sealed away. May God forgive our failures." Signed by Father Michael Donovan, it hinted at a secret too heavy to bear. Gaps in the records, years of silence between entries, suggested the church wasn't merely abandoned but deliberately hidden. A spiral staircase, carved from the same gray stone, wound upward to the bell tower and downward to unknown depths. We climbed first, the steps narrow, the air growing cooler. The tower was a 10-foot square, its arched openings offering a view that should have shown Portland's skyline, 30 miles away. Instead, an endless forest stretched to the horizon. No roads, no power lines, no trace of humanity. "This isn't right," Andy said, his voice tight. "We're high enough to see the city, even through trees." The view was wrong, as if we'd stepped into a time before Portland existed. In the tower's center hung a bronze bell, 4 feet wide, suspended from a sturdy beam. Its surface was etched with the same pictographs as the graveyard, their patterns forming a language we couldn't decipher. "These aren't decorative," Andy said, his flashlight tracing the lines. "They're deliberate, maybe a code." I photographed every angle, the symbols' curves and angles lodging in my mind like a half-remembered dream. We descended to the main floor, the afternoon light shifting to gold, shadows lengthening across the stone. The crypt awaited, its staircase worn in the center, as if countless feet had trodden it over centuries. The air grew colder as we descended, the metallic smell sharpening, mingling with a musty decay. A heavy wooden door, banded with iron, barred the way. I pulled its iron ring, the door resisting before swinging open with a rush of stale air. carrying the scent of time undisturbed. The crypt was a low-ceilinged chamber, stone pillars supporting the weight above. Rows of sarcophagi lined the space, their lids carved with knights and nobles, hands folded over chests, faces serene. "These are medieval," Andy said, incredulous. "European, not American. They don't belong here." The carvings were pristine, as if chiseled yesterday, defying the decay above. I counted 20, their presence an anomaly, transported across oceans for reasons unknown. The air was frigid, my breath visible, the metallic tang now overwhelming, like a blade pressed to my tongue. A vibration pulsed through the floor, subtle at first, then stronger, resonating in my chest. It became a sound, a deep organ-like tone, felt more than heard, growing louder, shaking dust from the ceiling. My vision blurred, ears aching. Then, a sarcophagus lid began to slide, inch by inch, stone grinding against stone. "We need to leave," Andy shouted, his voice barely cutting through the noise. He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the stairs. The crypt trembled, pillars vibrating, as if the church itself were waking. On the main floor, chaos reigned. The stained glass's colored light was gone, replaced by a harsh white glare pouring through every window, blinding, unnatural. Pews shifted, inching across the stone floor, as if nudged by unseen hands. The vibration intensified, a physical force blurring my sight, copper flooding my mouth. We ran for the oak doors, still ajar, the glare spilling through. Andy pushed them wide, and we stumbled out, expecting the churchyard's tilted tombstones. Instead, we stood on barren, reddish rock under a black sky. No stars, no moon, yet lit like midday, shadowless, impossible. The church was gone. Behind us, only rock and gravel stretched to the horizon, rolling hills of reddish-brown desolation. Above, the sky was absolute black, not the deep blue of night, but a void, swallowing light and hope. My watch read 6:15 p.m., but the unchanging brightness mocked time. My satellite phone was dead, its screen blank. My GPS displayed location unknown. Andy turned in a circle, his scientific mind grappling with the impossible. "This isn't possible," he said, voice small. The landscape resembled volcanic deserts, Nevada, Utah, but the sky defied physics, a black canvas that pressed down, heavy with absence. We walked, choosing the direction where the church had stood, our boots crunching on loose gravel. The terrain was monotonous. No plants, no water, just endless hills and boulders, each indistinguishable from the last. "What happened?" Andy asked after 20 minutes, his voice strained. I had no answer. "The church shouldn't exist," I said, gesturing at the wasteland. "And now this." He suggested a hallucination, crypt spores, toxic gases, but the shared experience, our failed equipment, dismissed it. "Both of us seeing the same thing?" I countered. "And our gear failing identically?" Andy's skepticism wavered, but he had no rebuttal. Hours passed, my watch ticking normally. 7:15, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, but the light never shifted, the black sky unchanging. Thirst grew, our 2 liters each dwindling in the dry, hot air. "We should ration," Andy said, sipping sparingly. "No telling how long we'll need it. 2 days maybe if we were careful." 2 days to find what? A way back, I told myself, though the words felt hollow. The sameness was torture. No landmarks, no change, just red rock and black sky, eroding our sense of progress. After 12 hours, according to my watch, Andy spotted a shape, half a mile away, breaking the monotony. Not a boulder, a figure motionless on the ground. We quickened our pace, hope and fear mingling. At 100 yards, I called out, "Hello!" No response. At 20 yards, we saw why. It was a skeleton, half buried in the rocky soil, its bones gleaming with a crystalline sheen, as if fossilized over centuries. It lay on its back, one arm stretched above its head, the other folded over its chest. I knelt, brushing away gravel, my exhaustion forgotten. The skull was wrong, elongated, eye sockets oversized, jaw narrow and long. The rib cage held 14 pairs, not 12, and the hands had 6 fingers each, a second thumb opposite the first. Not quite human, Andy whispered, tracing the skull's contours. The structure's too close to Homo sapiens, but these differences, millions of years of evolution, or... He trailed off, speculative. Engineering? I asked. He nodded, reluctant. Pure conjecture. Clutched to the skeleton's chest was a small leather notebook, its cover hardened but preserved by the dry climate. I pried it free, snapping a brittle finger bone, wincing at the sound. Sorry, I muttered, absurdly apologetic. The first page read, Property of William Hargrove, Expedition to St. Bartholomew's Church, 1879. Entries detailed Hargrove's 1879 discovery of the church, its Gothic features, and a catastrophic event. May 14, 1879. Disaster. The church has disappeared, taking Professor Blackwood and the others. A bright light shot from every window and door. When it faded, only bare earth remained. I am alone in this place of red rock and black sky. Hargrove's journey mirrored ours. Days walking, water rationed, a sense of being watched. Later entries grew frantic. I am followed. Eyes watch from the black sky. Professor Blackwood was right. The church is a door, but not all doors should be opened. He described a wall on the horizon, appearing and disappearing, taunting him with glimpses of home. The final entry, barely legible, read, The voices promise water if I follow. The wall is the way back. I no longer trust my mind, but I have no choice. Tell my sister in Portland I tried. The remaining pages were blank. I closed the notebook, looking at the skeleton, William Hargrove, stranded in 1879, dead in this alien world. We're not the first, I said, voice hollow. And the church has been doing this for at least 150 years, Andy added. Maybe longer. We left Hargrove's remains, continuing in our original direction, his fate a stark warning. The landscape remained relentless, each hill a twin of the last, the black sky a constant pressure. My legs ached, throat parched despite careful sips. After another 12 hours, Andy stopped, pointing. On the horizon, a vertical line shimmered, faint against the void. Is that the wall? He asked. It was too straight, too perfect to be natural. Energy surged, pushing back fatigue. We walked faster, the line resolving into a massive, translucent wall, hundreds of feet high, stretching endlessly left and right. Its faint blue glow pulsed, the first new light in this world, beautiful yet alien, like a sheet of ice or crystal. Up close, its surface was textured, faintly wet, rippling under our gaze. Through it, we saw an ocean, blue waves crashing on a sandy shore, sunlight glinting, a horizon where water met sky. It looked like Oregon, like home. Andy touched the wall, his fingers sinking slightly, ripples spreading like a stone in water. It's cool, he said, like condensation on glass. I pressed my palm against it, the surface yielding like firm gel, damp and cold, the first moisture in this dry hell. Cracks formed, thin spiderwebs spreading from our touch. Thomas, Andy said, voice tight, step back. But I was transfixed, the ocean sharpening through the fractures. Waves, sand, sunlight, the Oregon coast. The cracks grew, a sound like breaking ice filling the air. Water seeped through, droplets becoming streams. Run! I shouted, breaking free but too late. With a deafening crack, the wall collapsed, a torrent slamming into us, knocking the breath from my lungs. I glimpsed Andy, arms flailing, swept in another direction, before the current dragged me under, spinning, suffocating. My vision darkened, lungs burning, consciousness slipping. Then, the water thinned, and I was falling through air, hitting soft sand with a jolt. I coughed, water pouring from my mouth and nose, and dragged air into my starving lungs. Sand stretched in both directions, meeting an ocean on one side, grassy dunes on the other. The sky was lightening with dawn, stars fading as the eastern horizon glowed. I recognized it, Cannon Beach, Oregon, Haystack Rock silhouetted in the distance. I was home, impossibly returned from that red rock wasteland. Laughter rasped from my salt raw throat, but panic followed. "Andy!" I shouted, staggering to my feet, scanning the shore. The waves crashed steadily, indifferent, no sign of him. I stumbled through the shallows, the cold biting my legs, calling his name until my voice cracked. A voice answered, not Andy's. "Hello? Is someone there?" An older man crested a dune, rubber boots sinking into the sand, a tackle box in hand. His fisherman's jacket was heavy with salt stains, his face weathered but kind. "You look half drowned," he said, concern etching his features. "Are you all right?" I gasped, shivering violently, my clothes soaked. "My friend, he was with me in the water. Have you seen anyone?" He shook his head. "Just got here for early fishing." "Son, you need help." He set down his tackle box, pulling emergency blankets from his pack, wrapping them around me. His name was Raymond Foster, and he called 911, his truck's heater blasting as we waited. Paramedics arrived, treating me for hypothermia and water inhalation, their faces skeptical as I stammered about the church, the other world, the wall. "He's confused," one whispered, citing oxygen deprivation. "Probably a boating accident." At the hospital, I stuck to the truth, despite disbelieving glances. Detective Michael Rodriguez took my statement, his sharp eyes assessing. "How did you get from Forest Park to Cannon Beach, 70 miles away?" he asked, notebook open. I shook my head. "The church, it took us somewhere else. A desert, a black sky. The wall broke, and I washed up here." His expression was neutral, but his tone suggested doubt. "We found your car at the trailhead, backpacks in the trunk. Planning an overnight trip." I nodded. "We wanted to explore the church thoroughly." He closed his notebook. "Get some rest, Mr. Patterson. We'll talk again." Raymond drove me home, his tales of odd ocean phenomena. Lights underwater, waves defying currents, a fog that stood still in wind, oddly validating. "Forests keep secrets too," he said, handing me his card. "Don't lose yourself looking for answers." I thanked him, stepping into my apartment, which felt alien, too normal after the other world. I showered, changed, and began preparing to return to Forest Park, driven to find the church, to find Andy. But Rodriguez called, summoning me to the station. 3 weeks of searches yielded nothing, no Andy, no church. The Coast Guard called off their efforts, citing ocean currents, but I knew Andy's fate wasn't tied to the sea. Rodriguez suggested a cave collapse, my story a trauma-induced delusion. "Your cameras, phones, never recovered," he noted, implying convenience. I searched the forest daily, retracing our route, finding only ordinary trees, the creek, the pines, but no stone circle, no church. My apartment became a shrine. Maps, sketches, Hargrove's journal, which I kept secret, its pages a private testament to the truth. Raymond visited, bringing salmon, his non-judgmental presence a balm. We cooked, and he shared more stories. Lights in the deep, voices on empty waves. "The ocean keeps secrets better than any man," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "Maybe forests do too." His words lingered, a warning against obsession, but I couldn't stop. 6 weeks after Andy's disappearance, Rodriguez called, his voice different. "There's been a development. Come to the station." I drove, heart racing, expecting news of Andy's body. Instead, Rodriguez led me to his office, closing the door. "Yesterday, amateur cavers near Mount Hood found a chamber with a stone sarcophagus," he said, opening a folder. Inside were human remains, identified by dental records as Andrew Wilson. The room tilted. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Mount Hood is miles from Forest Park." Rodriguez slid a photograph across the desk. A skeleton in an open stone coffin, bones darkened, encrusted with minerals. The forensic anthropologist estimates these remains are at least 300 years old, he said. Yet the dental records match Andy Wilson, alive 6 weeks ago. Another photo showed the sarcophagus, covered in carvings. They depicted our journey, the church's bell tower, the desert's black sky, the wall's collapse, my escape, and Andy's survival, carving his own coffin in a cave. "These match your story," Rodriguez said, his skepticism gone. "Details you gave weeks before this was found. I owe you an apology." The next day, at Portland State University, I stood before Andy's sarcophagus in a climate-controlled room. It was massive, every inch carved with our story. The stone circle, Hargrove's remains. The wall's blue glow. The final panels showed Andy's solitude, his discovery of a cave, his labor to carve this monument, recording our journey. The last image was Andy lying inside, eyes closed, hands folded, waiting for death. "How is this possible?" the anthropologist asked. "These remains are centuries old, yet he was alive weeks ago." I had no answer science would accept. The sarcophagus drew global attention, scientists debating hoax, rapid fossilization, time dilation, but no theory explained the carvings, the DNA, the dental records. It now resides in the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry, part of an exhibit on unexplained anomalies. Andy's parents buried an empty coffin, his remains a museum piece, studied by those who'll never grasp the truth. I still hike Forest Park, chasing the stillness, the muffled air that marked our approach to the church. It eludes me, a phantom door to a world that took my friend. Hargrove's journal, the carvings, Andy's sarcophagus. They prove it's real, waiting for the next seeker. I live with questions no one can answer, a story no one believes, and the certainty that St. Bartholomew's Church endures, hidden, hungry, a predator in stone. What would you do? Could you walk into a forest knowing it might lead to a place that defies time and space? A church that might claim you as it did Andy? Would you risk everything to uncover a truth that might destroy you, or turn away, leaving the unseen to its eternal vigil?